That's right, it's time for some more dispatches from the front lines. Because I took a pure Firstborn army to a tournament. That's right, not a single Primaris model was in this force. We had Tactical Marines, we had Devastators, we had Razorbacks.
We got tactical smart missiles, phase plasma pulse rifles, RPGs, we got sonic, electronic, ball breakers.
And oh my god, it was so much fun. This might sound crazy, this might sound kind of heretical to all my guard bros out there, but this might be the most fun that I had a tournament all year. This was even more fun than when I ran the Tau. So come with me on this journey as we all rediscover why Firstborn is Bestborn. And so without further ado, by Bolt and Blade Brothers, let's purge right into this thing.
Attention guardsmen, the Commissariat has detected you have not yet liked this video. Do so immediately or else you will face the Emperor's wrath. And anyone who has not yet subscribed to the channel will be transferred to the penal battalions. That is all. Move out!
As is tradition, I want to start off today's video with a few thank yous. First and most importantly, I want to say a big thank you to Matt and the Northern Warlords for organising this event. You see, this event was a special one because it was a memorial event for our mate Stu, who passed away a couple of years ago. Stu was a really good mate and he was a big part of our community, and so when he went away it hit us all a bit hard. And one of the things that Matt and the Northern Warlords have done to commemorate him is to run these events, these Stu Memorial events, once a year, and we had one last year and this was the second one. And like last year, whilst the event was a little sad, it was actually really good to see so many people come out and honour the memory of just a great bloke and a good friend. I also want to say a huge thank you to the Mordian Glory community. Not only have you guys been incredibly supportive, especially at the time a couple of years ago when Stu did pass away, and that really did mean the world to me, but I also want to say a big thank you to you for more recent events, because the reason that I was running this Firstborn army is because I was doing a live stream and I mentioned that the Stu Memorial event was coming up, and I mentioned that I kind of wanted to run a Space Marine army for it because it was Stu's favourite army was Space Marines. And whilst we were on the live stream, I started browsing eBay, as I am wont to do, and we saw that someone was selling this fully painted Blood Ravens Firstborn only Space Marine army. It was almost like Fate. And I said, hey chat, should I buy it and take it to the memorial event to honour Stu? And the donations, the super chats, all of that came flooding in instantly. And once again, it was really nice to see, guys. So thank you so much to everyone who was in that live stream. Thank you so much to the Mordian Glory community as a whole, because you guys have not only been very supportive, but you actually made this after action report possible. But with all of that said, now let's get into the video proper, and we'll start off with the army list overview. As is tradition, I have recorded a separate video getting into the nitty-gritty detail of the army list. And of course, I'll make sure there's a link down in the description to that video so you can check it out. But for those of you who just want a quick summary of what I was running, here it is. So this is a 1,500 point Space Marine army. Because this tournament was a bit more casual, they brought it down to 1,500 points. I was running the Ironstorm Spearhead detachment because it was the easiest one for me to remember. I did think about running Gladius, but I knew that using the tactical doctrines and devastator doctrines, for me it'd be a bit like trying to use health potions in a video game. I just ended up holding on to them until it got to the end of the game and I realized I hadn't used any of them. So I had a look through all of the different detachments for Marines, and I figured the one that just gave each unit a reroll to hit, reroll to wound, and a reroll to damage was pretty simple and pretty easy for me to get my head around. As for which chapter I chose, I took Blood Angels. And the reason I took Blood Angels is because this is a Blood Ravens army and it's red and Blood Angels are red. So I figured that made sense. But because I didn't take any Blood Angel units, it's really only Blood Angels in name, which is for the color scheme, and I'm essentially running this as a non-Codex Divergent chapter, and so even though this is technically Blood Angels, I am still benefiting from the super duper oath where you get the +1 to wound as well. Getting into the units, I had a Terminator captain, this chappie right here, and he had a Storm Bolter and a Relic Blade. He was also upgraded with the enhancement, the Flesh is Weak, giving him a 4+ Feel No Pain. I took the enhancement because I had 10 points left over. And that was the only character in the army. I originally had quite a few more characters in here, like other captains and lieutenants and stuff, and I just found like I was spending like a huge amount of points on characters, so I decided, you know what, I'll just take one captain to lead the force because that's kind of fluffy, and then after that I'll kind of focus on going multiple small units, and I'll just let my detachment rule give me the rerolls that I kind of need, and I'll just let Oath of Moment do a lot of heavy lifting. Moving on to the rest of the army, my Space Marine captain was leading a squad of Assault Terminators, all with Thunderhammers and Storm Shields, and they would go inside a Land Raider Crusader. I also had another unit of 5 Tactical Terminators, just with an Assault Cannon, and a Sergeant with a Storm Bolter and Power Sword. All the other guys had Power Fists. As for the remaining elite troops, I had a single unit of Vanguard Veterans, each one armed with a Vanguard close combat weapon and a plasma pistol. I originally wanted to run these guys as Assault Marines, but then I remembered that Assault Marines have been made legends, so I ended up just asking the TO, like, what should I do? Should I go for Assault Marines or should I go for like Vanguard Veterans? What's like the vibe of the event? And he said, just go for the Vanguard Veterans. It's basically the same profile anyway. And I was like, okay, that's fine. And then we had a unit of Devastators, and the Devastator Sergeant had a Plasma Pistol and Power Fist. And then there was 1 Multi-Melter, 1 Las Cannon, and 2 Plasma Cannons. And the reason I went for this loadout is because that is what the Devastator squad had. It's that simple. There was no major tactical thinking behind, oh, I should take a variety of weapons to handle a variety of situations. Nope, that's just what the Devastator squad had when I bought it, so that's what I ran it with. And this idea of just running what the units came with, a little bit of Stillmania, if you know what I mean by that, is something that I actually continued throughout the rest of the army. So the remaining units were 3 squads of Tactical Marines and 2 Razorbacks. And you'll notice that I've combat squadded every single one of the Tactical Marine units, breaking them down into two 5-man squads each, giving me 6 5-man squads overall. And you'll see that, like, for example, this Space Marine combat squad has got a plasma gun, 3 guys with bolters, and then the Sergeant has got a bolt pistol and chainsword. I ran the guy with the bolt pistol and chainsword, even though it's totally free for me to upgrade him to a plasma pistol and a power fist, because I was playing ruthlessly WYSIWYG, and I was kind of interested to see if it would make a huge difference. And also, because of the nature of this event, as we'll see when we get to the lay of the land, I wanted to just play a bit more old school, you know? A bit more WYSIWYG, a bit more what it is what it's got, and just not worry about running the most optimal stuff all of the time. So if we go through what each 5-man squad had, we've got a 5-man squad with a heavy bolter, a 5-man squad with a heavy bolter, and another 5-man squad with a heavy bolter. We've then got a 5-man squad with plasma pistol, and we've got the bolt pistol and chainsword guy. And then we've got another 5-man squad with a melter gun and a bolt pistol and chainsword. And then we've got another 5-man squad with a plasma gun and a bolt pistol and chainsword. Now, I do believe this is how I originally ran the army, but I did actually make a slight change when I got the tournament. Between my original plan of splitting them down like this, and I actually ended up having one of the 5-man squads just be all bolter guys, and taking the heavy bolter and adding it to one of the squads. I think it was a squad with the melter gun. So the reason I did that is I realized that I was probably just going to have like 5 tactical marines just sat on my home objective, and I realized, well, there's no need for them to have the heavy bolt if it's not going to do anything. So if you see in the pictures that there's like one squad which has got a heavy and a special weapon in it, that's the reasoning behind it. Other than that, the reason I split these units up to have heavy bolter or heavy weapon in one half and then the special weapon in the other half purely came down to the idea of, well, I'll probably want a more fast-moving assault unit in something like the Razorbacks, and then I'll probably want a unit that will be standing still and doing a bit of fire support. And that worked totally okay, although, benefit of hindsight, a lot of the time I was just moving around with even the heavy bolter squad, so it didn't make a huge difference, but it still meant that because the special weapons are spread out a little bit, every 5-man squad had a bit of punch. Because I know if I'd put all of the special weapon stuff inside like one 5-man and then just had 3 5-man bolter squads, there's a good chance that, well, these squads wouldn't have really contributed all that much, but by having that heavy bolter, it just gave them that little pinch of kick. Finally, we had 2 Razorbacks, one with las cannon, one with heavy bolter. Again, that's just because what they came equipped with. The overall grand strategic thinking behind this list was, well, I want to run all Firstborn, and I love Tactical Marines, so let's lean into that. And also, I wanted to try and represent as many of the different classic Firstborn units as possible. Tactical Marines, Devastators, Assault Marines, and Terminators. I know that there's things like Centurions out there, but A, as someone who's been playing this game a long time, I still think of Centurions as the new kids on the block. And B, well, Paul is bad at stuff. He's kind of got the Centurion meta covered, so I figured I'd leave that bit to him. On a more serious note, I wanted to run some MSU Space Marine squads with a nice focus on BATTLELINE, because I have been talking about this idea of you needing your ship munchers, and you can't just focus on like pure elite stuff. You need to make sure that you've got some cheap units that can throw out there and do some rubbish jobs. And so this is kind of a gardified Space Marine army, where we've got some elite units here with the, I know, Devastators, right? But still, Devastators, Terminators with the Captain, and the Land Raider, and we've got the Vanguard Veterans. Those are all pretty good damage dealing units, but we've got a nice, healthy foundation of flexible ship munchers. At the end of the day, these Tactical Marines are actually still okay at doing work because they're Space Marines. They're still 2 wounds, right? So they've got a little bit of durability against small arms, and each one of these squads, obviously not all in the same turn, but they can all throw grenades. There's some mortal wounds available there, and they've each got a plasma gun or a heavy bolter in there, so there's a little bit of damage in there. They're not nothing. And what I found with the Tactical Marines is I was really, really impressed by what they were able to do. And I think you guys see that in the overview. The Tactical Marines, I sort of expected them to be a bit rubbish, like looking great, but rubbish. But they actually turned out to be, well, pretty tactical. But with all of that said, now let's move on and take a look at the lay of the land. So this tournament was a 1-day 3-round event, and it was a 1,500 point tournament. But using the term tournament here is a little bit misleading. It was more like a big social event. Everyone was just here to have a good time, have a few drinks, and toast the memory of our fallen comrade. This was reflected in the fact that it was only 1,500 points rather than the usual 2,000, and that players were encouraged to bring fun and fluffy lists. And whilst there were official pairings, players could grudge match each other each round. So you didn't have to actually play who you were paired into. Instead, you could go, I want to face you, in case it was someone you'd not met before, or someone who you've not played in a long time, or someone who you just particularly like playing against. However, this is a Northern Warlords event, so even when you say bring something fun and fluffy, people still end up bringing pretty good lists by most standards. For those that don't know, Northern Warlords is a really competitive, really cutthroat club whose motto is turn up, get smashed, get better. And some of the players at this place are just fantastic and amazing. Some of them are the best in the country. I know there are a few people in the Mordian Glory community who have been to some Northern Warlord events, and they'll be able to attest to what I am saying. But putting all of this competitive stuff to one side for a moment, it's easy to look at an event like this and just dismiss it and go, well, it's not a proper tournament, so it doesn't mean anything. Well, I actually don't think anything can be further from the truth. The reason I say this is because I've played a lot of competitive 40k over the last couple of years, and I have been doing a lot of thinking about Warhammer 40k recently. Some of this thinking I've done very publicly in the form of some pretty salty content on this channel, something which I've definitely come through the other side of, and I'm just feeling a lot more positive about 40k now. I had to get the salt out, guys. I had to get it out there. But going to this event was so much fun. This event, in some ways, was the best tournament that I've been to in all of 10th edition. And that's not because it wasn't competitive. That wasn't because there weren't people, you know, that would bring in half-decent lists and stuff like that. It was because everyone turned up with a different vibe. The vibe wasn't to just utterly smash each other. The vibe wasn't cutthroat competitive. The vibe was just chill. And this tournament really, really reminded me of some of the tournaments of old that I've been to. Some of the tournaments that I went to, especially during 8th edition. And so, in a crazy kind of way, whilst it's easy to look at this tournament and dismiss it, I think that's almost the entirely wrong approach to have. This tournament, in some ways, I feel represents competitive play at its best, when everyone is here to have fun. Everyone's here just to have a laugh. And the idea of being the biggest dick-swinging player in the room is a secondary consideration. This is honestly what a lot of tournaments used to be like. They used to just be social events. Before we had ITC points and rankings and ladders and all that kind of stuff, people just turned up for a bit of a jolly, and that was it. And they still brought hard lists, and they still tried hard, but there was a different vibe. And this tournament, this event, really felt like the glory days of old. But I'll stop getting misty-eyed over old editions. I'll stop talking about how it was back in my day. Oh, go on then, Grandad. Look, I know why you guys are really here. You want to see how this Firstborn list did, don't you? So, without further ado, let's get into the games. So, game number 1 was against Brownie and his Death Guard. Brownie is a good mate of mine. We've been playing on and off against each other for years at this point. And some of you will actually know his handiwork. He does a lot of commission painting, and he is the one that did the fantastic paint job on Simon's High Elf army. Now, in Brownie's Death Guard army, he was running 2 of the bloat drones, one with the mower, one with the cannons, and then he had a whole bunch of poxwalkers. I think he was in the detachment, which gives him 3 extra squads of 10 poxwalkers, and then he started the game with a squad of 10 and then 2 squads of 20. He also had a unit of Plague Marines, and he had a unit of Blightlord Terminators and a unit of Deathshroud Terminators, and he also had a Mephitic Blight Hauler. I think Typhus was in the list as well. The mission for round 1 was Purge the Foe. We were playing on Games Workshop Terrain Layout number 1, and it was Dawn of War deployment. Speaking of deployment, I went for a 5-man squad of Tactical Marines with just bolters on the left flank, supported by another 5-man combat squad with a heavy bolter and 4 bolters, and then the Vanguard veterans. In the center, I went for an armored push with my Terminators with Captain inside the Land Raider Crusader, a squad of 5 tactical Marines with a heavy bolter hunkering down behind it, and then I had a Razorback with the heavy bolters with a squad with a bunch of special weapons inside, and another 5-man squad with a heavy bolter and the plasma gun and the sergeant just chilling out next to it. I also had my 5 Devastators on my home objective. Finally, on the right flank, I had a single Razorback with las cannons with a combat squad inside with a plasma gun, and I had my 5 tactical Terminators in Deep Strike Reserve. As for the Death Guard, they infiltrated a unit of Poxwalkers onto this objective here, and they supported them with the Flesh Mower bloat drone. In the middle, there was some Plague Marines, as well as a big blob of Poxwalkers led by some kind of character. Can't remember exactly what it was. And then we had another unit of Poxwalkers led by another character. I think that was the Death Guard Sorcerer, and they were on the right flank supporting the Blight Lord Terminators and another drone and another squad of Poxwalkers. There was Typhus and the Death Shroud in reserve, along with the Blight Hauler. We rolled off for first turn, and I won the roll-off, meaning that I was going first. And I decided to go absolute balls to the wall. I was like, you know what? I'm not sure what to do with this army. I'm not sure how to play this mission. I don't play on a lot of Games Workshop terrain. So if in doubt, go forward. That is the Imperial Guard way. Upon sight of the enemy, I advance, sir. That's my style, sir. Over on the left flank, I softened up the Poxwalkers holding the objective with my Heavy Bolter Tactical Squad before sending in another combat squad, the ones with the Bolters, and the Vanguard Veterans into the Poxwalkers, easily obliterating them. Quite literally, by bolter and blade, that objective was purged and cleansed. In the mid, I moved forward with my Land Raider, got out the Assault Terminators, and then charged into the Poxwalkers after softening them up with lots and lots of Land Raider Crusader fire. I actually made this squad of Poxwalkers here my Oath of Moment target, and my Land Raider went to town, basically scything down the vast majority of the unit before the Terminators went in there and were able to clear the rest. The Terminators got quite a good charge, and based on where the surviving Poxwalkers were after they made that charge, not only were they able to beat the crap out of the Poxwalkers, but they also then consolidated into the Plague Marines, which was nice. I also took the 5-man tactical squad that I'd been sheltering behind the Land Raider and put them inside the Land Raider, so they were nice and protected and safe. Because a lot of people just think that you just get out of transports, but the truth is you can actually get out and get into the transport in the same turn, but with just 2 different units. Over on the right flank, the mass tactical marine push. You don't hear that every day. 2 5-man squads as well as 2 Razorbacks with another 5-man squad inside made a good push and a good effort on the big blob of Poxwalkers on the right flank and whittled them down, as well as tying them up in combat with a cheeky Razorback charge. Last thing to mention, the Devastator squad put a little bit of cheeky fire into these Plague Marines here and was able to whittle a few of them down. Obviously, that took place before the Terminators consolidated into them. Going over to Death Guard turn 1. There is a little snafu with this picture. I did take it during my turn 2 movement because I was like, oh crap, I didn't take a picture of the Death Guard. So there's a little bit of this is beginning of my turn 2, end of Death Guard turn 1 situation, but it should be pretty clear what happens. The Death Guard were definitely feeling a little shocked and awed by the speed and ferocity of the Firstborn assault, and they responded pretty effectively, but I felt like I got away with it a little bit in turn 1. The Plague Marines passed their battle shock test and fell back from the Terminators, and then the Nurgle Terminators came in and did a good counter charge into my Terminators, but some of them actually survived. I think the Captain survived and one of the Assault Terminators survived. It turns out that just having 4 wounds and a 2-up save and a 4+ vulnerable save actually makes you pretty tough. Yeah, so they did manage to survive, and also the Razorback, obviously the Poxwalkers fell back from the Razorback, and the Blight drone came over here and started doing some damage. I think some shots were taken into the Land Raider, for example. And then the Fleshmower drone came over here and it went into my tactical Marines. But I actually ended up passing a ridiculous number of saves. I mean, I think it was something like I only lost 2 tactical Marines to a Fleshmower drone. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And that was kind of it. There really wasn't a lot of Death Guard on the board at this point. It's only turn 1 and they've got a little bit in reserve, and they've also got their 3 Poxwalkers and stuff coming in. So I was feeling pretty good as we went into my turn 2. Now, in my turn 2, I was able to kill the bloat drone over here. I actually think I made that my Oath of Moment target, and between the Tactical Marines, that obviously they fell back, but I mean, these Tactical Marines down here with their heavy bolter, the Vanguard veterans with grenades and plasma pistols, and the Terminators, which I deep struck down. I was actually able to sweep away that bloat drone, no dramas whatsoever. I fell back my surviving Terminators into the Land Raider, and then the Land Raider piled everything into the Blight Lord Terminators that were here, and was able to kill all of them and wound the Chaos Lord that was leading them. Over here, I did another big mass tactical marine assault, and I went into the Poxwalkers, and I was able to kill all of the Poxwalkers, and also start wounding the character that was leading them, the Sorcerer. End of my turn 2, I thought things were going pretty well. I figured that, sure, the Death Guard have got 33 Poxwalkers that are going to come in this game, but I don't struggle against Poxwalkers. And sure, they've still got the Death Shroud and Typhus and the Phytic Blight Hauler, but you know, I look at this board at the end of turn 2, it's looking pretty good. Unfortunately for me, the Death Guard had pretty good turn 2, and they started turning this franchise around. So a unit of 3 Poxwalkers came in here, and then they actually made like a 9-inch charge against my Terminators here. These were then supported by the Plague Marines, which also charged into the Terminators, and Typhus and the Death Shroud were able to deep strike in 6 inches away and also get into the Terminators. So obviously the Terminators all died. And then there was a whole bunch of, it was like little bit shooting, like the Mephitic Blight Hauler, some Plague Marine shooting, just lots of like little bits. And then Typhus got like the super duper mega result on his Destroyer Hive and was able to kill my Land Raider. My Land Raider was basically on 4 wounds, right? And Typhus, I think he did like the maximum number of mortals he could do. He just got very lucky. And that basically just crippled it. And then it just got finished off by the Scraplet shooting, which that's 2 big assets out of my list right away. Furthermore, despite the fact that I was piling quite a lot of wounds onto the Sorcerer, he just wouldn't die. He just would not die. And he was just like taking out a couple of Marines every turn in response. And then these Poxwalkers came in and charged this tactical squad. And so suddenly it's like, okay, I've got a lot of units that are tied up in combat. This was the moment when I realized that combat doctrines would have been really useful, because I could have like fallen back and shot a bunch of stuff, but no, we had committed to the Ironstorm, and that's what we were sticking with. And I will say this, the Ironstorm was great, loved it, definitely would use it again. Very simple doctrine. Most of the stratagems are terrible, so you don't have to worry about them. Just remember Armour of Contempt and grenades and smoke, and you're pretty much good to go. And the fact that I had so many small squads meant I was getting loads of extra rerolls across the army, which was pretty decent. So we go into turn 3, and by the end of it, I can feel the game slipping away from me, because my dice start going pretty cold and Brownie's dice start going pretty hot. I basically do no damage in my turn 3, even with Oath of Moment, because I shoot all of these Devastators into the wounded, like, he's not a Lord of Contagion, he's the one with the gloopy gun, right? I think Lord of Virulence. And I put the las cannon wounds, the plasma cannons do like 3 or 4 wounds, and so he's got like 5 wounds on him, and he just passes all his 4-up saves. And then I charge him with an Assault Terminator and a Captain, and do another 3 or 4 wounds to him, and he passes all of those. So this guy literally passes every 4-up invulnerable save. I'm talking like 9, let's say about 9 4-up invulnerable saves in 1 turn. He only needed to fail 2 of them to die. But no, he passed all but 1. 1 damage 2 weapon went through, put him down to 1 wound. If he'd failed 1 more 4-up save, he would have died. So that was a bit annoying. And then over here, the stinky bastard who's just like doing magic at me just won't die, and he's just still going. Remember, it's like Purge. That's like a really big deal if I'm not killing stuff. And then over here, I fall back with these tactical marines inside the Razorback, and the tactical marines over here, I go for a desperate charge against the Poxwalkers. But guys, 2 squads of tactical marines are unable, between shooting and charging, to kill 10 Poxwalkers. That's how badly my dice were going in this turn. And I even failed the charge. I failed the 4-inch charge from here to here. It's not even 4 inches. It's 4 inches away. So it's like a 3-inch charge. I rolled the double 1 to get this Vanguard into the Poxwalkers as well. It just went badly. But it's a combination of I was rolling badly, but I'm also in the stink now. And Brownie had chosen the plague, which means I'm -1 to hit when he starts getting close to me. And so it makes sense that my damage starts dropping off. But the combination of that plus the fact that he started passing all of his saves, like all his feel no pains, his everything, it was a double doozy. However, the good news was that there were some really cool action shots, and the game was very, very cinematic. This is the left flank with the Tactical Marines taking on the Poxwalkers. This was in the center. You couldn't quite see this from the overview picture, but this was my Tactical Marines desperately trying to tie up this bloat drone. And then over here, you've got the Stinky Boy who won't die. He's on 1 wound, by the way. He just refuses to lose that last wound versus another tactical squad. And then we've got the Razorback with a Sergeant on top, screaming defiance. Really, his squad's inside against those Poxwalkers. Going into Death Guard turn 3, and it's pretty straightforward for them. They mop up the remnants of the left flank with the Typhus squad and the remaining Plague Marines and the Poxwalkers, and they also, as part of their detachment rule, bring another 10 Poxwalkers in right here. So the whole left flank is just completely gone. Oh shit, there goes our left flank! And then in the mid, the 1 wound character here actually falls back from the captain, but the captain, an absolute mega boss. I love the 4 Feel No Pain enhancement. It's so good. Just tanks everything from the Mephitic Blight Hauler. And then the slap fight between the Tactical Marines and the drone continues. Stinky McStinkerson continues to batter the Tactical Marines that are against him. Bear in mind, this was a 1 versus 10 fight when it started about 4 rounds of combat ago. And this guy has just been on 1 wound pretty much the entire fight, just refusing to fail his 3-up and 4-up saves. And the Poxwalkers ineffectively scratch against the hull of the Razorback. This next picture shows the end of battle round 4. So my turn 4 and the Death Guard turn 4. Truth be told, it was a very quick battle round 4. In my turn, I managed to kill the Stinky Boy because I decided that killing him in combat, whilst might be honourable, was also proving to be quite difficult. So I fell back with the Marines here. I actually put them into the Razorback after I got the tactical squad that was inside out of the Razorback. And then the Razorback, it's trapped in combat, but big guns never tire, shot into the character, the Sorcerer, and killed him. And then my Tactical Marines here got out and charged into the Poxwalkers and were able to start battering them. And that was basically it. My Devastators tried to line up some shots, and I was able to kill the 1 wound character, the 1 wound Lord of Virulence as well. And that was my turn 4, and for the Death Guard turn 4, Typhus and Co. battered my captain, and the Poxwalker started splurging onto the various objectives. Going into round 5, and the game is starting to wrap up here. Both sides have battered each other. I do draw Storm Hostile Objective as one of my final secondaries, and I just managed to do it. I used the Devastators here to weaken the Poxwalkers, and then the Tactical Squad disembarks 3, moves 9, and then it made a 7-inch charge and managed to finish off the remaining 1 or 2 Poxwalkers, which allowed me to storm the hostile objective. And I was also able to just clear out the remaining Poxwalkers here. I was pretty fortunate. I got kind of lucky between the Razorback attacks and the Tactical Marine attacks. I also chose that as my Oath of Moment target, which is kind of crazy. Also, I've got bolt pistols on my Tactical Marines, and I've also got the big guns never tire of the Razorback. I think that was a factor as well. But I cleared the Poxwalkers out in my turn, and that meant that by the end of my turn 5, I was able to hold these 3 objectives. But of course, the Death Guard have got their turn 5, which is very quick. They just come in and take this objective away from me because they score at the end of the turn. So they've got the Plague Marines back here hold this objective, the Blight Hauler holds this objective, and the Poxwalkers and the Death Shroud hold this objective, getting them some nice primary points at the end of the game. And with all that done, it was time to tot up the final scores and work out who had won and who had lost. And the answer is no one, because we both had fun. Okay, less wanky bullshit answer. It ended in a dead draw, 83 to 83, which was amazing. And in many ways was the perfect end score because it was just such a fun game. Seeing the Firstborn go up against the Death Guard was just amazing. And I think it was really cool how at first the Blood Ravens were just dominating the Death Guard, but like any good guard army, they get hit hard, but they hit back even harder. And seeing the Death Guard being able to recover from what looked like an unassailable, unwinnable position was amazing. And so really, really cool seeing the ebb and flow of that game with the Firstborn taking the lead, but the Death Guard managing to claw it back. But now we move on to game number 2, and I face off against Lewis and his Tyranids. Like with Brownie, Lewis is a good mate of mine and a veteran of the Northern Warlords, and it's been a goodly while since I got an opportunity to play him, so this was a very welcome game. Lewis was running Invasion Fleet for his bugs, and he had 2 units of Gene Stealers, one 5-man strong, one 10-man strong, but both led by Broodlords. He then had a unit of warriors with melee weapons led by a Winged Prime, and he had a big unit of Zonothropes led by the Neuro Tyrant. He also had a 10-man squad of Hormagaunts, and there were 2 Lictors in the army, 1 Biovore, and 1 Exocrine, and I believe there was also a unit of Gargoyles. The mission was Linchpin, and we were on GW terrain layout number 2 with Search and Destroy deployment. Speaking of deployment, I went for a Razorback with heavy bolters with a tactical squad inside with the special weapons, and then just outside it I had another tactical squad with heavy bolter, plasma gun, and sergeant with bolt pistol and chainsword. On my home objective I had the 5-man bolter squad and the Devastators, and I also had another 5-man combat squad with heavy bolter just tucked in down there. Up front, I had my Land Raider with Termies inside and a couple of 5-man combat squads with heavy bolters. And then I had the other Razorback with a squad with the plasma gun inside just over at the top of my deployment zone towards the left-hand flank. The Vanguard veterans were bumming around in the home field objective as well, and my tactical Terminators were in Deep Strike reserve. Lewis went for his Gargoyles in Deep Strike, and then the vast majority of his army just went in a big death blob behind the central ruin here, and he did infiltrate a Lictor up by the sandwich, and then he had a Lictor that infiltrated towards the center, and then there was a unit of Gene Stealers that were deployed here, but with their scout move they did move a bit further into the top center ruin. With everything deployed, it was time to see who was going to go first, and this time the bugs seized the initiative. Turn 1 for the Nids was pretty fast and furious. Both Gene Stealer cult units staged themselves up nicely for some sort of turn 2 push, and the other units just hung back waiting for that turn 3 opportunity to strike. The Hormagaunts did go for a big push early on because they can advance and charge, and so they bounded forward, but then they just failed like a 4-inch charge with a reroll. It was pretty unfortunate because if they'd made that charge, it would have tied up a lot of my units. Although there is a chance that I could have fought my way out of that. I mean, at the end of the day, it's 10 Hormagaunts hitting on 4s with the Synapse little token they've got from the Neurotyrant, wounding on 4s, AP -1. So, 15 hits, 7 wounds. Maybe I lose a Tactical Marine or so. Tactical Marines fighting back, I reckon I could have fought my way out of it, especially between the tactical marine attacks and the bolt pistols, but we'll never know because they didn't make the charge. Which frankly was very good for me because it meant that I could just move around doing what I wanted. And that's exactly what happened. Starting off, I took the Razorback from the south, pushed it forward, jumped out the 5-man tactical squad with the plasma gun and heavy bolter. And then between that squad, the squad back here getting a good angle on the Hormagaunts, and the Razorback itself, and the fact that this was my Oath of Moment target, we easily cleared away those Hormagaunts. I took one of the 5-man tactical squads heavy bolters and I just popped them into the Razorback, doing the old 1 in, 1 out tactic. I did something similar up north as well, going for another Razorback assault. This was the las cannon one, and I just moved forward so that I was within the lone op range of the Lictor, and then jumped out the squad of tactical marines. And they were just armed with, I think it was the melter gun, and I just threw grenades at the Lictor, took off half its wounds, and then just killed it with the remaining fire from the squad. It was really, in my mind, this was like a really cool moment. I just imagined the Lictor scuttling in the shadows, trying to blend in with its chameleon skin. And then suddenly, roaring forward, a bright red armored vehicle crashes through. The side hatch pops out. 5 tactical marines move out, scope in the area. Priority target sighted. Neutralizing. One guy underhand throws the grenades in. It knocks the Lictor off its feet. It's like on the ground as it's like flailing around on the ground. And then it's a cheeky double tap. I think it's from the plasma gun. Double tap. Bang bang. Threat annihilated. Objective purged. It just, in my mind, it just felt like the most cinematic, quintessential Space Marine moment. It felt very 40k. I mean, it was just 5 tacticals taking on a Lictor, but it felt cool to me. As for the rest of my units, I played it a little conservatively. I was very aware that there were 2 units of Gene Stealers here, and I was very aware that if I got a bit Billy Big Bollocks, that those Gene Stealers were going to come in and just start wrecking multiple units. So I kind of, you kind of see I've got like multiple layers of defense in depth, as it were. So I'm expecting these tactical marines to die, but then I've got this and this to get tied up. But then I've got these 2 tactical squads available. I'm expecting these tactical marines to probably have a bit of a bad one, but then I've got the Land Raider and this squad back here, and the Terminators and the Vanguard Veterans to jump forward and deal with them. So I was kind of just sending out these initial combat squads, clearing out the initial threats, securing the objectives, and then waiting to see what the Tyranid response would be. And the truth is, I did not have to wait very long. Striking with alien speed and precision, with a cunning only the hive mind could devise, the Gene Stealer cult push came in on turn 2. The small 5-man squad of Gene Stealers with the Broodlord went into the tactical marines that were in the center and easily cleared them out. We also had the Sodathropes come down here, and they started putting some pretty good fire onto my Razorback, but between, I think it was Smoke or Armor of Contempt or both, it actually managed to survive, which was pretty decent. And there's a unit of Von Ryan Leapers that I had forgotten Lewis had in his army that had been hiding in this ruin, and they sort of jumped forward over here, ready to start doing a bit of a flank attack later on. The Warriors took the position of the Gene Stealers, ready to go in there, and then we had the big Gene Stealer cult unit here. So this is a 10-man unit of Gene Stealers, and I thought Lewis was going to send them up here and just clear all of this out. But he decided that he wanted to go for a sort of a stage behind this ruin here. And he was kind of banking on the fact that, you know, he's got Gene Stealers, they're T4, they've got 2 wounds each, and they've got that invulnerable save as well. And he's got like the Feel No Pain that I think you can pop on the unit with like a stratagem as well. He was kind of banking on that, allowing them to survive for a turn, because he wanted to go and start getting into all this stuff back here. Personally, I do think that was a little bit of a mistake because, you know, it would have been better, I think, if he'd gone over here, trashed all of this, and then done basically exactly the same thing, but just having taken some units out. Unfortunately for Hive Tyrant Lewis, the Gene Stealers were not that durable. Even with the Feel No Pain on them, Oath of Moment is just a hell of a drug. I mean, you just get full rerolls to hit and then +1 to wound. And so, between the Land Raider Crusader just had a field day. The Land Raider Crusader plus, I had 2 5-man tactical squads. One's just behind these crates here. Plus the Razorback with Oath of Moment, just plus grenades, love grenades, just cleared out the big 10-man squad. You know what? I actually had the Assault Marines lined up ready. The Assault Terminator, I should say, lined up ready to go in there. And the Vanguard Veterans lined up ready to go in there. But I just didn't need it. Land Raider Crusaders are great. With Oath of Moment, they're great. That +1 to wound, just mwah, fantastic. And as for the Gene Stealer unit down here, well, it's a 5-man squad with a Broodlord. I didn't have Oath of Moment on it, but I got the 5 Marines out of the Razorback first. Then I fell the Razorback back, which meant that I didn't need to lose out on the shooting from the squad inside. And then between the 2 5-man squads of Tactical Marines, and I also had the plasma pistols from the Vanguard Veterans, and I brought my Devastators forward, and I also brought my Tactical Terminators down. Bit of a strange position for them, but I figured I want to make sure that both the Gene Stealer squads go away. I was able to clear them out. Yeah, I was able to clear them out. But it actually took most of this to do it, so it really does give you an idea of how good Oath of Moment is. Now, with those 2 Gene Stealer units down, I would say that the game swung pretty significantly in my favor. The NIDs are looking very thin at this point. But you should never underestimate the will of the hive mind. And they still had a few tricks up their sleeve. Turn 3 NID, and they sent the Von Ryans down into the tactical squad here. But they were alright. They managed to tank it. I think I popped Arm of Contempt on them, and then they just sort of were alright against the Von Ryans. I mean, I lost 2, but I was able to kill a Von Ryans in return, which is pretty decent. Yeah, I was alright with that. And then the Gargoyles came down into the mid and did an objective. I did lose the Razorback to shooting. I believe it was from the Exocrine, or it may have been from the Zonothropes. And I did actually also lose one of the 5-man tactical squads as well. So I lost a Razorback tactical squad and a few other tactical Marines to the NIDs. But they didn't go for the push with the Warriors, which I was a little surprised about. But I guess it makes sense. Like, if they push out here and then charge in here, sure, they might get the Terminators. But then there's going to be a lot of stuff that could counter-push them. But hey, if you're not going to push me, I am going to push you. And upon sighting the enemy, you guys know my mantra, I will advance, sir. That's my style, sir. If in doubt, go forward. And so coming over to Marine turn 3, I cleared out the Von Ryans down here with the tactical Terminators, and then I pushed forward and cleared out the Gargoyles with the Vanguard Veterans and the shooting from the north. I also did some cheeky firepower against the Zonothropes down here and was able to kill 1 or 2 of them as well. We move into battle round 4, and the turns are coming thick and fast. I am getting a significant lead over Lewis in terms of the points, and he tries to make a few things happen in his turn 4, but he just gets a bit unlucky. The Lictor moves out but fails its charge. The Warriors continue to hide in these ruins. I think they're just hoping to be able to do something in the final turn of the game. Maybe if I push forward onto this objective in my turn 4. And the Zonothropes move forward and they nearly wipe out the Devastators. But again, Arm of Contempt, such a clutch stratagem, allows me to survive with 1 Devastator on 1 wound, which is really important because if I lose that Devastator, I actually lose my linchpin objective, because I've been a little bit silly and I'd pushed too many units up towards the north, and I should have just left the 5-man tactical Marine squad here. But this all sort of happened around the time when I was worried about the Gene Stealers, and then I just misplayed over here. This should never have really been a threat, but fortunately the Emperor smiled down on me and I was able to keep that Devastator alive. And then of course I just auto passed his morale in my turn. Speaking of which, in turn 4, Space Marine, we deliver the death blow to the hive mind. And in what very well may be the coolest way possible, I take out the 2 remaining major assets of the bugs in a full-blown, genuine Terminator assault. How it all went down was the Land Raider Crusader pushed forward, the Assault Terminators jumped out, they were still able to charge thanks to its assault ramp, and then they went into the Warriors. And I was able to batter those Warriors thanks to, you guessed it, Oath of Moment. But they did get to fight on death, some of them, thanks to a stratagem, and they took out half of the squad on death, which was pretty impressive, considering that a lot of them had died, but I guess that's why they fight on death, right? And then over here, the Tactical Terminators launched an assault into the Zoanthropes, and despite some pretty good overwatch, because this bit here is actually open, despite some pretty good overwatch, the Terminators went in there, and I rolled a little lucky, and I battered. I absolutely mashed those Zoanthropes. Lewis rolled pretty badly on his saves as well, to be fair. And the Zoanthropes were basically made combat ineffective. The Warriors were all destroyed with just the wounded Winged Prime left. And really, with that Terminator assault, the Tyranids were knocked out of this game. With just an Exocrine, a Biovore, a Prime, and the remnants of a Zoanthrope squad, there was not much they had left in the tank. And so Lewis and I shook hands, talked out the final bits of turn 5, and it ended in a major victory for the Blood Ravens. The final score was 86 to the Marines and 55 to the Nids. My post-game thoughts and analysis on this one is that when you play Space Marines, you really feel like the main character. I finally get it now. I've basically been playing as like the NPC into all other Space Marine games when I've been running my guard and my NIDs and stuff like that. When you play Marines, the units actually just feel like Marines. They definitely pass the vibe check. From those tactical Marines jumping out of a Razorback and conquering and killing that Lictor up top to the mass Terminator assault, I just felt like this was just Marines being Marines. Another thing that I noticed about this game was just how flexible my Marine units and my Marine army is. Like, I found my tactical Marines being able to do a little barneying in combat against certain units. They're able to do a bit of shooting. They're able to do a bit of screening. Tactical Marines are actually really effective ship munchers, and I think they are definitely being slept on by the Space Marine community. For me personally, if you ask me what would I rather take, Tactical Marines or Intercessors, and I'm genuinely going to say Tactical Marines every single time. I put them in the list thinking they were a bit of a meme, but they actually turned out to be a bit of a dream. Another thing that I noticed with this game was how balanced my force felt. I wasn't taking a skew in any way, shape or form. I had a little bit of armor, a little bit of ship munchers, a little bit of elite stuff, and all of it just worked very nicely. But with 2 rounds down, it was time to go into game number 3. And this time, the Death Guard were back for revenge. Now, this round 3 was actually a bit of a special one because I got to play against Jack, who is Stu's son. Now, I've known Jack since he was a little whippersnapper, and he's done some growing up, and now he is a young man. And so this was one of the first times that I've had an opportunity to play against him, and it was really, really cool. Having said that, the cheeky little shit brought a load of Death Shroud and Blight drones. God, I can tell that Matt's taken him under his wing. Matt's a very, very good player, and Jack, I have to say, I've seen him when he started his Warhammer career, and getting to play against him now, he has come on leaps and bounds, and I can tell he's going to be a force to be reckoned with in the near future. In his list, he had a big squad of Death Shroud led by a Lord of Contagion. He then had another smaller unit of Death Shroud with no character. Typhus was leading 1 unit of Poxwalkers, and there were 2 other units of Poxwalkers as well. He then had 2 of the Blight drones and 1 of the Mephitic Haulers. He also had a Plague Caster, who I think was leading one of the other Poxwalker units, and he had a Nurgle Demon Prince, who is a bit of a nasty pasty. The mission for round 3 was Take and Hold. Deployment was Search and Destroy, and we played on GW Terrain Layout number 4. For deployment, I put the Vanguard Veterans and the Devastators and a Razorback with Heavy Bolters with a Melter Gun squad inside towards my bottom right. I put the 5-man Bolter Bitch squad on my home objective, and then everything else went up north. And my idea was I'm going to hold this objective and then try and have a play for the middle one, at the very least contest it, whilst also going for the objective in the top left. I knew that the Vanguard could probably also boost over here and start messing around with this objective if I needed them to. Of course, I had my Tactical Terminators in Deep Strike Reserve because that's where Tactical Terminators go. As for Jack, he put a Blight Hauler, Typhus and the Poxwalkers, and the Demon Prince towards the right flank, and then he put a Blight Drone and the 3-man squad Death Shroud towards the center. He also had a unit of Poxwalkers holding his home objective with the Playcaster, and then he had the other Blight Drone and the big squad of Death Shroud, and they were on his left-hand flank. There was also a unit of Poxwalkers which infiltrated onto the objective on the top left from my perspective. We roll off to see who's going to get the first turn, and uncharacteristically, the Death Guard spring into action. Having said that, the Death Guard turn 1 was pretty cagey, but that was the right thing to do. Their contagion range isn't that high at the moment, and if they push everything out, I can just do a big counter push, and because I won't be affected by the -1 to hit Stinky Aura, I'll be able to just blast a lot of them off the table. So what Jack does is basically stage up nicely, make sure that his Death Shroud in a good position here, just maneuvers his Poxwalkers a little bit, and mostly just gets a lot of things ready around this central ruin near the central objective. Very quickly, the turn passed over to me. Now, I probably should have also played it cagey, but that is not my way, and instead I went Billy Big Bollocks! The Vanguard Veterans jumped from their ruin over to the one on the far right, holding that objective. They got a big 6 on their advance, and the Razorback came round here. Now, it's a bit of a ballsy position, but my thinking was, if he decides to try and get the Razorback, he'll have to come quite far forward and expose himself, and then I'll be able to counterpunch him. I even bring the Bolter Marines forward. I'm thinking, hey, they don't need to hold the objective from the back. They can hold it from the front, and also, that means they can start pushing forward if needs be. Everyone else went for a bit of a staging in the mid, but I also went for a cheeky move up north as well. Because you can see here that I asked Jack, how many Poxwalkers do you have on that objective? He's like, 2. And I was like, well, the Razorback's OC2. The Poxwalkers are only OC1 each. So I moved on there with the Razorback, and that meant that I took that objective away from him. But I didn't go for the push just yet. My thinking is, next turn, if Jack doesn't come spilling out here, then what will happen is I will push forward a couple of squads and be able to try and take those Poxwalkers out. Turn 2 for the Death Guard comes around quickly, and they do go a little bit more aggressive this turn. Firstly, Jack steals my own idea and takes his Mephitic Blight Hauler and pushes it onto the objective. It now has more objective control than me on there, and so he takes that objective away. Ah, the Padawan is learning. He also brings both of these bloat drones over here to target my Razorback, but because I've got plenty of command points saved up, I do Smoke and Smoke and Armour of Contempt, and my Razorback survives, no dramas. Unfortunately, Jack does fall for my cunning ploy. You see, one of the objectives that he drew was a tempting target, and I purposefully chose the objective here. The reason I chose this one, I knew he'd be able to get any of them, right? But the reason that I chose this objective is because it's the most exposed one, and I've thought any unit that he moves out onto there, I'll be able to get that and take it out of the game. When I am approaching an army like Death Guard, my thinking is always to just be carving any assets out of the list that I can. Because they're a very good army, but they're quite an elite army, anytime you can take anything off them, you should do that. And I figured, I've got a lot of 5-man squads here. I've got a lot of objective control. If I can get him to push something onto that middle objective and then take that away, no matter what it is, that'll still be quite nice for me. and he decided to put his Demon Prince on that objective. Now, I think this was a little bit of a mistake, but I think this was a mistake born from experience from his previous game, because in his previous game, a similar situation had come up. We had a bit of a chat about this like after the game. A similar situation had come up, and his Demon Prince had gone on and had survived everything. And so he thought, well, if it worked last time, it can probably work this time. Unfortunately for Jack, it didn't quite work out that way. But he is Death Guard in the day, so it didn't go too badly for him. Now, this picture here is actually at the end of the Death Guard turn 3. I forgot to take a picture of mine turn 2, but fortunately I can take you through everything that happened using this picture. So I pushed my Land Raider forward, and I jumped my Terminators out. I also pushed forward with some Tactical Marines, and you can see I brought my Devastators around this side as well, and my Razorback was here, and I also had the Razorback up here. Now, all of these units could draw line of sight onto the Demon Prince, and I oathed the Demon Prince, and then it went down to the shooting. There's also a little bit of grenades that got thrown in there as well, but the long and the short of it is the Demon Prince went down to just the shooting. Now, this meant that I had my Assault Terminators with a captain that was still able to rock and roll. And I charged them into the 3-man squad of Death Shroud Terminators that were behind this ruin. Unfortunately for me, I rolled like piss. Now, it was a little bit of a case of I rolled like piss, and it's a little bit of a case that I forgot the Death Guard -1 to hit aura, and I forgot that Thunderhammers hit on 4s. So I went in there thinking, look, it's 6 Terminators versus 3. I've got Thunderhammers, he's got Scythes, I'll be totally fine. But unfortunately, I went in there and I was like, oh, I'm hitting on 5s? Oh dear. So I only killed like one of the Death Shroud and like injured another one of them. And then in return, you know, they did a little bit of damage to my Assault Terminators. But the big thing was we go over to Death Guard turn 3. And the other unit of Death Shroud, the big one, just comes out of this ruin, charges into my Assault Terminators and butchers them. Even my Feel No Pain on my captain could not save me against a fully tooled up Death Shroud Gigablob. One other important point from my turn 2 and Death Guard turn 3 is that my Tactical Marines, I did do a double push onto the Poxwalkers that were here. I had a 5-man tactical squad that moved from here to here and then charged in, and then a 5-man tactical squad that got out the Razorback, got round the side, shot the Poxwalkers, and then charged in. Between those two units, I was able to kill the Poxwalkers over the course of my turn 3, and I believe Death Guard turn 3, but there might have been 1 or 2 left over. But long story short, that sideshow ends up with the Tactical Marines taking out the Poxwalkers. One other thing to mention, actually, is the Mephitic Blighthauler came down here and actually did a number on the Razorback, but didn't kill it, which will be very important in a moment. And I've also got a picture of that sideshow that I was talking about up in the north with the Tactical Marines with the Poxwalkers. And you can see they basically wrapped that up pretty quickly. Now, going into my turn 3, because the Razorback survived, I was able to actually create a bit of a movement blocker for the Death Shroud. I took the 5 Tactical Marines that had been next to the Land Raider, moved them in a line there, and then I also brought the Razorback over here, and that basically move blocks the Death Shroud. Now, the Death Shroud are obviously going to kill all of this stuff, but it just means instead of them being able to go in a straight line forward and then get a big charge off, by doing this, it meant that I was just outside of their maximum charge range because they had to go round the Tactical Marines. Just a great example of having a Ship Muncher unit do a good job. I also brought my Tactical Terminators down here. I've actually found often with my Tactical Terminators that I'm not deep striking them off in some random location where they end up getting isolated and dying. What I found to be a really good way of using them is to deep strike them just essentially in your lines, but in response to a threat that is approaching your lines. And between the Tactical Terminators, who I did actually need their assault cannon to finish it off, but between the Tactical Terminators, the Devastators, this tactical squad, and the Vanguard Veterans, I was able to kill the Mephitic Blighthauler. It did actually take all of that stuff, even with Oath of Moment on it, just because, well, I wasn't rolling that good. I wasn't rolling that good. And Jack was doing an amazing job with those demon saves. Demon save! Fortunately, I did have a little bit of firepower left over with my Land Raider Crusader, but I wasn't in rapid fire range, and I didn't have Oath, but I wasn't able to tickle the Death Shroud, and between the Land Raider, some grenades here, and the Razorback, I was able to actually fairly effectively whittle them. I think there was the Lord of Contagion and 3, maybe 4 others. I think there's one hiding behind the ruin there. And as you can see, the sideshow in the north was resolved in my turn by the Tactical Marines finishing off the last Poxwalker. I tried to finish him off with the bolt pistols, but unfortunately Jack made a double 5-up on his Feel No Pain. The reason it would have been nice to do it in the shooting was then the Tactical Marines could have been free to, you know, maybe do something else. One of the squads could have been free to do something else, but both squads' bolt pistols failed, so it came down to choppy, and the Poxwalker was turned into goo. Turn 4 Death Guard, and Jack goes for a bit of a push turn. Everything in the middle just gets swept aside by the 2 squads of Death Shroud. 1 4 with the Lord of Contagion, 1 just 2 with an injured guy. And Typhus comes down here to start threatening this objective. And then the 2 bloat drones move over to the north to try and deal with those pesky Tactical Marines that have cleared out those Poxwalkers. At the end of the Death Guard turn 4, I was under a little bit of pressure, and I know what it's like to face Death Guard. I actually play them quite a lot. And even you think when you've got them on the ropes, they always seem to claw things back. And I was a little worried that this game was starting to go the way of game number 1, where it looked like I was doing quite well, but actually I was going to struggle. Because the big thing is now the Contagions at like maximum range, I'm going to start hitting it worse. And also, these Death Shroud are just so tough. And also, if you notice, I'm a little bit out of position. I've not got anybody on this objective. There's Death Guard are in commanding positions in the mid. Look, I'm going to need a big turn 4 to try and get something out of this game. Fortunately, in my turn 4, I was able to do just enough to stay in the game. The Vanguard veteran passed his battleshock test and then jumped over to here. And then everything else just poured firepower to Death Shroud. And between shooting and Oath of Moment and a tank shock from the Land Raider and grenades from these Tactical Marines, I was able to kill all but 2. There was 1 Death Shroud Terminator left on 2 wounds and the Lord of Contagion. They did smack my Land Raider back, and they took it from 12 wounds down to just 4. So some big hits there. I rolled a bit badly on my saves, only passing like 1 of them. But the Land Raider stuck around, and that meant that the Death Shroud were now kind of stuck in combat with it. Now, I was under no illusion it was probably going to die next turn, but it did mean that, well, I was just, to be honest, I was just trying to clear them out. And it was a bit of a desperate tank shock, but I was just trying to clear them out. We get into the final turn of the Death Guard, and Typhus moves onto this objective here. And the bloat drones move on to the objective in the north. They do actually have more objective control than me up there now, because between their shooting and their charging and their own native objective control and the way they're reducing my objective control, they do actually take that objective away from me. And then in the middle, I mean, those poor Tactical Marines, they did such a good job of storming and purging those Poxwalkers, only for these bloat drones to come over there and just take them out. Now, in the middle, the Land Raider actually survives, but the Tactical Marines don't, because the Death Shroud piled in and consolidated into them, and they basically went for the Tactical Marines with the Lord of Contagion. He killed them, and then the Death Shroud Terminator went after the Land Raider, but I got lucky on my saves this time, and I didn't fail any of them. This meant it was over to the final turn of Game 3, and to be honest, I didn't really do very much. I just fell back with the Land Raider. I tried to finish off the Death Shroud in the middle, but I just whiffed. To be honest, I just utterly whiffed, and so I wasn't able to actually get any more kills in this game. I just did a few of my secondary objectives, scored a final few points, and that was that. And once the dust had settled, it turned out the game was very, very close, with the Death Guard getting 55 points and the Blood Ravens getting 62 points. With the defining thing being that I just got more primary. That was it. Jack was basically on 5 primary points the entire game. on one objective, and there were a couple of times when I actually got like 10 primary points, for example. And so I actually didn't get anywhere near as many secondary points as him. It was purely a case of me getting a bit more primary, which of course I was able to do because I had lots of objective control units. Those cheeky tactical marines, those tactical marines up in the north who cleared out those poxwalkers, who held on until the final death guard turn, they were what actually won me this game. If I hadn't had those guys, I wouldn't have controlled those objectives, and I wouldn't have been able to get those extra primary points that got me the victory. And so with game 3 over, the tournament, the social event came to an end, and I had managed to go undefeated with my pure Firstborn army. But before we all start saying Firstborn meta incoming, when I say we all, before I start saying Firstborn meta incoming, Firstborn OP, it's very important to remember that this was a very chilled event. It was more of a social gathering with some games of Warhammer and a few beers, and it was just a ton of fun. What I will say, though, is that the Firstborn definitely showed their potential. And so much so that whilst this was a bit of a casual, fluffy one, I actually really want to take them again. Now, obviously, I'll have to take them from the 25mm bases they're on currently and put them on the proper 32mm bases. I've got some basic extenders that I can do that with. But I really think they did show some potential. I felt like the Tactical Marine squads were actually exactly how they were meant to feel. Flexible, able to handle any battlefield role. Almost the perfect ship munchers. Dare I say it? Between grenades, plasma and heavy weapons and a bit of combat, they really could do a bit of everything that they were called upon to do. And then seasoning that list with just a couple of elite units. Well, I say a few elite units, like the Terminators. The Terminators were consistently impressive. Every single game you can look at those Terminators and they did something. Whether it's the tactical Terminators, providing some decent fire support to the Assault Terminators, going in there and battering stuff. I mean, the Assault Terminators got a bit screwed over in the last game, but that was more of a misplay by me rather than them being a bad unit, as it were. So I was really impressed by them. Really impressed, really enjoyed it, and I actually really want to take Pure Firstborn again. What I would probably do the next time that I run them was optimize the list a little bit. Maybe go for Plasma Pistol and Power Fist on the Tactical Sergeants, for example. And add an extra 500 points in, of course. What would I spend that 500 points on? I'm tempted by another Tactical Squad. But I also kind of want another Vanguard Veteran Squad. And maybe another Terminator Squad. And a Predator. And a Boxy Naut. There's a lot I want to add in. I'd probably... Maybe... I'm thinking I want the Predator for a pinch more armor. I'm thinking I probably want an extra Vanguard Veteran Squad for a bit more speed and melee. And with those two things in, that is going to come to about 200... about 250 points. That leaves me another 150. 250, I should say. Kind of feeling maybe a Tactical Squad and a Razorback. Something. I think there's something there. But I'll play it by ear. Let me know what you guys think. What would you add to this army to get up to 2,000 points of pure Firstborn? Interestingly, I'm not that bothered about adding any extra characters in. It's kind of like when I ran my Tau, I felt like I didn't need many characters. That the units themselves were solid enough without being babysat by characters. And if I look back at the armies that my opponents brought this event, they had a lot more characters than me, and they had a lot less units than me. And it's kind of like what I said with the Tau. If you spend a load of points on characters, then you end up with a very top-heavy list. And I'm starting to go the complete opposite way when it comes to how a lot of people run their armies. I'm like, what's the one decent character I can take in here? Right, that one will do. Yeah. In terms of reviews, obviously I've wanked off the Tactical Marines. I thought they did very well. I've wanked off the Terminators. I thought they did very well. I've wanked off the Land Raider Crusader. I thought that did very well. I was pleasantly surprised by the Razorbacks. The last kind of one was really interesting because it's got twin linked, so it rerolls to wound naturally, and then it's also, because of it being an Ironstorm, it's got one reroll to hit as well, so that worked really nicely. And then the ability where your Marines jump out and they get full rerolls to wound if the Razorback is shot at something is actually really nice. Yeah, so the Razorbacks were perfectly okay. I actually had no issue with them whatsoever. I went into this thinking they're going to be 95 points too expensive, but actually, no issue whatsoever. Totally okay with it. And the Devastators were totally fine. Yeah, they were fine. I had no issues with them whatsoever. I didn't really focus on them all that much during the event, but every game they killed something. Every game I reckon they got their points back, whether it was, you know, damaging those Plague Marines and killing the character in the first game, to pushing back and weakening the Zonothropes in the second game, to the third game where they just consistently contributed to the firepower going into the middle. The Devastators were pretty decent. In fact, I didn't really have any complaints about any of the units. I was totally fine with all of them. In terms of loadouts, I was totally fine with the loadouts as well. When I first ran this, I thought, do I really want heavy bolts on my Tactical Marines? But I actually found them fine. Yeah. I think sometimes we all worry a bit too much about getting the absolute optimized loadout. But when you're running an army like Marines, you've got a lot of safety nets there with things like Oath of Moment and things like getting the reroll on Ironstorm and stuff like that, and you've got Armour of Contempt, and you've got some core stratagems like grenades and stuff. I think with Space Marines and Tactical Marines and Firstborn in general, you probably don't need to worry as much about the exact loadouts. Like if I was to run this list and, you know, put like a flamer in one of my tactical squads, I don't think it would be the end of the world. I'm probably better off with Plasma and Melter, to be sure. But I think you don't have to worry as much as probably I have been doing about the most optimal loadout with these guys. Going full Stillmania and just taking what they had and how they came when I bought them off eBay was great. I think for the first time in my life, I finally get Stillmania. But of course, all of this is just like my opinion, man. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments section below. What did you think of the Firstborn? What would you change about it? Are you tempted to take some Firstborn yourself in the future? And do you think I should take this list again? Maybe to a proper RTT? What about taking it to a GT? I'm just saying. I've got GTs, RTTs, and Super Majors all coming up in the next 2 or 3 months. Maybe we go on a bit of a Firstborn journey. I'm just saying, maybe we make it happen. But if you did enjoy this video, make sure you smash that like button to support it, boost the algorithm. And if you want to see where this Firstborn madness goes, then make sure you subscribe to never miss an episode. Would you like to know more? If so, then please consider becoming a channel member or patron. By supporting the channel, not only will you be doing your part, but you'll also be helping me create more content for your viewing pleasure and unlocking a whole host of perks. You get everything from a badge next to your name, custom emojis, but the big one is access to the Mordian Glory Discord server, an online community with almost 2,500 active members. It's always popping off in the MG Discord. We've got channels for army lists, hobbying, tactics, stories, and even a pretty spicy meme section as well. For all you greenhorns that wanted to see the Mordian Glory Hole, today is your lucky day. And joking aside, I do want to say a massive thank you to all of the current channel members, and Patreons. You guys are amazing. Truly the lifeblood of the channel. I could not do Mordring Glory full-time without the incredible and generous support of my members. So thank you guys so much. And last but certainly not least, I want to say a personal thank you to all of my top tier Patreons. These are the War Masters, the people who have truly gone above and beyond the call of duty. So a heartfelt thank you to Redfield, 32, Jurgens, Miasma, Try Again, Bragg, RJ, Scorpion, Bonbon Vert, Lord Pryor, Nicholas Walsh, John Stubbs, Guardian, Varney, Sword, Fish Trombone, Picklock the Forged. Seriously guys, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Your support is incredible and it makes a huge difference. Thank you so much. That's all for now. Hope you've all enjoyed today's video, and of course, as always, see you guys next time.